Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning into the Liberty Report. With us today is Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you today.
Good morning, Dr. Paul. How are you this morning?
Are you rested?
No.
Because we're busy.
I'm not rested.
And we have an important trip to make.
We do indeed, yeah. Yeah, I'm not rested.
Going back to Sin City.
Yeah, that's right.
So, okay, that's a different story.
That's a different story.
Hopefully it is not sad.
We'll have the dirty details when we get back.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, they're up to the same business again. You know, Biden got around and gave a speech, and most people could understand the word. Give me more money.
Yeah,
we need more money.
Yeah.
He got that message out, but not a whole lot, just 106 billion.
Yeah.
And the usual, round them up.
Yeah.
And they wanted, but it was mostly in foreign policy. Everybody wants their hand out. You know, Zelensky was traveling around to try. I think he saw the handwriting on the wall. He had to work for his money.
Yeah.
Before everybody was inviting him over. We want to be part of the hero or who have saved Ukraine and welcome him in and make him an honorary congressman. Give him a speech on the floor.
Yeah.
But now he's hustling around and with his hat out there trying to get more money. And it looks like he's going to get some because, the dissension with the speakership has a lot to do with funding, Ukraine, but there's more funding than that, and which is a healthy debate, that just think how much did we spend over there already? Over $100 billion,
Yep.
And they hardly said boo. So that is coming up, but they have to get together, and they have to get together to instruct the new Speaker of the House, and he has to agree to this. Of course, they have a little ways to go there. Mainly, what if they do have an agreement? They don't have any money,
Yeah.
So they'll have to work a deal with the Fed in order to take care of things. But they needed an extra $105 billion. Israel wants money. I'm surprised there's resistance to that. That's the most resistance I've seen. I'm sure they'll get their money. But Taiwan, just in case peace breaks out, in Ukraine and in the Middle East, that's not likely to happen, but they're prepared. We will have to make sure that we're involved in Taiwan in case there's a little skirmish there. And also, some people would argue, well, there's somebody for domestic purposes too for the immigration. But I see that as international and a foreign policy mischief on why this is going on, because we're not defending our borders.
Yeah.
And here we have millions of people coming in here, and the money for them. So it looks like there's going to be a lot of people happy. The big thing is, will they get credit? So I know you check up on how the people are going. You like polls. Maybe the polls will tell us whether the people have been willing to go along with all this spending.
Yeah, I think this looks more and more, and I'm not the first person who said this, looks more and more like Biden's campaign strategy. I'm going to show that I'm a world leader. I'm a wartime president. You even talked about that. I'm a wartime president. And that's going to take the place of him having to actually campaign. He's not going to have to debate former President Trump. He's not going to have to appear because he's too busy manning all these wars that he wants. And as you say, he's looking for a three-front war. That's going to cost some money. So he turns to Congress. If we can put that first clip up from our friends at antiwar.com, he says, you know what, I need $105 billion because I need to arm Israel, Ukraine, and Taiwan. Under his presidency, we now have a three-front war. That's another $61 billion, I think, to Ukraine. And as you say, Dr. Paul, we've already spent about $130 billion there to zero effect because Ukraine has done nothing. The counteroffensive was a complete failure. And now they're in the part of the muddy season where they really can't do anything. So $60 billion for that one. And then we've got to give 14.3 billion to Israel because they have used up all their weapons bombing the Palestinians to death. And then, of course, you say some money for Taiwan. We can't let that go unspoken, so we have to spend over 7.8 billion sending more weapons to Taiwan just so the Chinese keep irritated with us and keep feeling like we're about to go to war.
You know, there's a lot of mixed opinion about the 8 that we got the speaker thrown out.
Oh, yeah.
But I heard one of the members of that group of 8 talking the other day. He was describing how desperate this country is and is going to get financially, and yet they're looked at because they're sticking to their guns, and they wanted to cut. But anyway, that is dramatic. That is an example. This is dramatic. It shows where we are on this. There's for the whole Congress now. They're still spending the money. They're going to get this money. I mean, what are they going to put it up and vote down, and everybody's going to forget about it? There's no way that's going to happen. There'll be a few lobbyists knock on the doors, and they will get this money. But if you happen to stand firm on the Constitution, the promises the party makes, and also what the people in Congress campaign on. But when it comes to spending, they just don't have the courage to quit. But the problem is that they don't realize it has already ceased to exist, because the theft of the money from the people has become difficult because they can't keep taxing people. So they don't even think about it hardly. They just run up the debt, and print the money. So nobody's really worried about this not happening, except the polls may be showing some signs that they're getting tired of it. There was one statement in one article about there was support for the Biden relatively better marks on handling the conflict at 28%, and it was better than his overall thing, 8%. So that is good news. That means that my cynicism isn't completely honest about it, because maybe there are people waking up, but they will wake up. But what I fear is that they'll pick the wrong thing, the wrong people, and figure that we need more government. That's what's happening throughout my life. I think that's what happened. They create the problems. The worse it gets, the more government that people end up with.
Yeah,
we'd like to change that.
Yeah, we would. Well, you started out by talking about how poor old Zelensky is not getting the attention he wants. We've talked about it on the show. Well, it's even worse than that. There are thousands of 155 millimeter shells that are now going to be sent to Israel instead of Ukraine. They were supposed to go to Ukraine, but they're going to go to Israel. And so that's a big problem. And the other big problem, Dr. Paul, as you mentioned, is that there is an increasing opposition to continuing to fund Ukraine. It's a massive money pit. There is no progress shown for all the money we put in. On the contrary, everything we've done has backfired. And so the brilliant idea of Congress, of the Senate, is to put these two together. They want to put the aid for Ukraine and the aid for Israel in the same bill, because no Republican is going to vote against aid for Israel, they think. So tie them together and it's an automatic pass. And it's really incredible cynicism. And McConnell, Senator McConnell, he's the minority leader in the Senate, he is all in favor of tying them together because he does not want to see the end of funding for the Ukraine war. He doesn't want to. And here is his rationale. I think he was on one of the shows over the weekend. And if you look at this rationale, I have to say it, I know it's not nice, but it really does show a twisted mind. Put on this next clip. Here is Mitch McConnell. He says, "No Americans are getting killed in Ukraine. We're rebuilding our industrial base. The Ukrainians are destroying the army of one of our biggest rivals. I have a hard time finding anything wrong with that. I think it's wonderful that they're defending themselves, and also the notion that the Europeans are not doing enough. They've done almost $90 billion. They're housing a bunch of refugees who escaped. I think that our NATO allies in Europe have done quite a lot." So he actually thinks it's wonderful. He thinks several 100,000 dead Ukrainians is wonderful because we're building up our industrial base.
It has been argued, and we tend to agree a lot about this, as did the founders, that be leery about democracy. Sometimes it doesn't produce the best in leadership.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I was thinking about, reading all this stuff. And these are the kind of leaders we get. Then I got to thinking, well, what about the president? He was, an example of what democracy can bring to us. And well, maybe we have a good vice president. Well, no, that doesn't answer the question. That democracy stuff isn't really working all that well. But it is a sacred cow, and they're able to use that as the cow, but they never change anything. And all it is special benefits. Now, some elections could be more legitimate if they were honest elections, and the people didn't, or the government didn't have, so many goodies to pass out.
Yeah. That's
That's why there's an investment. The people invest in this in crooked government because there's a lot to be gained, a financial gain. They don't look for the satisfaction of saying, I did that one for the cause of liberty, and that is good, and somebody's going to be a freer person now. And we just liberated Ukraine, so after we destroyed it,
Yeah.
carelessly.
Yeah. Well, the rationale of this whole thing, of tying them together, is that they will take advantage of the popularity of military aid to Israel to cancel out the unpopularity of more military aid to Ukraine. Now, that's the thinking in McConnell's mind and in the minds of the Democratic leadership in the Senate and probably a lot of the House. So that's the idea. There's only one problem. Put up this next clip, because this is a poll that came out over the weekend that I found fascinating. Now, this is CBS News. It's a CBS News YouGov poll. Amid concern about wider war, Americans give mixed reactions to Biden's approach toward Israel-Hamas conflict. Now, it used to be automatic that there was overwhelming U.S. support for anything Israel decided to do, and overwhelming support by Americans to give them military aid. Well, this is a fascinating poll because it shows that is no longer the case. This is, I think, one of the most fascinating questions. Go to the next one, because the question is, should U.S. send weapons and supplies to Israel? And this is by party. The Democrats say 53% of the Democrats say no, we shouldn't send them anything. Among independents, 55% said no, we shouldn't send them anything. In Republicans, yes, the majority said we should, but it's only 57%. It's barely over half of Republicans say yes, we should send Israel weapons. And when you combine the three of them, the vast majority, certainly the majority of Americans do not support Biden's policy on Israel of sending more weapons. So that is a huge shift. And I've looked at some other polls that show that this is also very heavily weighted by age. Younger people are just not as enthusiastic about our Middle East interventionist policy than the baby boomer generation, the 60-something people. The younger folks just aren't into it. So I think this is really a shocking poll showing that the trend is not even going in the warmongers' direction when it comes to Israel, which used to be an automatic.
Yeah, and this is a measurement of the process that goes on, and people are getting sick and tired of this whole effort to keep pumping more and more money into the area. But it will come to an end. The whole thing is when and how will it happen, and how many people are going to suffer. But this all could be prevented. That's the part that bugs me, because when you think about it, why are we in this mess? This crazy talk about how much $100 billion, and we have to divide it up among our enemies or our friends or what? the recipients anyway. So all they needed to do was obey one rule, and it wouldn't have happened. If it obeyed the Constitution, there's no authority to take money from poor people in this country and give it to rich people in these war zones. So the thing wouldn't have happened, and yet we still do it, and but it's always the process, and this invites the special interest, the competition that goes on that we witness up there. You just pointed out a perfect example. And then the Ukrainians have to fight for the money, with Israel. Who's going to get the most? Well, we'll give them. Everybody gets some, and maybe this is going to come to a close vote. So they might say 105 it's not quite enough. But let's go to 120, and I think we can satisfy everybody and get this thing passed.
Yeah.
And bring peace to the world.
Maybe we can get him to sneak $1 billion in for us. Nobody would know. But I think we talk about sending it to rich people overseas, and that's partly true. But I think McConnell really spilled the beans on this, because it's not necessarily that. He's saying, hey, this money is going to go to our weapons manufacturers. It's good for business. And of course, you look at who his donors are, and there you go. There you have it. So that's how it goes. Well, let's have a quick look at northern Gaza, and I think this is why some of the opinions are changing in the U.S. These kinds of images are shocking the world. This is a hellscape. If you look up, Dr. Paul, you can see this is what it looks like. There have been over 5,000 people killed. Well, obviously, people think that you must retaliate for a terrorist attack. This does not seem to be that. This seems like something much more. But one other thing in this $105 billion, there's money for illegal immigration. You'd say, oh, well, they're going to tighten the borders, they're going to get tough. Go to the next clip. Well, here's a little thing from the White House. This is Representative Mary Miller. She pointed out Biden released his so-called border security funding request. It includes $850 million for expansion of migrant pathways and refugee resettlement from the U.S. To the U.S. from the Western Hemisphere. So, yes, it's border money. It's money to open the border even wider. So this is how they're going to deal with it. And speaking of that, Dr. Paul, our second topic, if we can go next, is something that you were very interested in, and that is that the governor of Illinois is a little nervous. There's going to be a convention in his cap in Chicago, the Democrat convention, but there's a lot of illegal immigrants being sent there.
Isn't it interesting that they use the immigration issue for political reasons? One, if you want to come across as somebody that's very humanitarian and open-minded and not closed-minded like Republicans who don't want to spend the money, we'll show you what it is like to be generous and take care of people. We'll invite them in, and they can be rescued here. So, and it happens for a long while, and they say, well, the immigration is good and good as long as they all go. They finally decided as long as the immigration goes to the red states.
Yeah.
But if a red state, and I guess Texas is guilty of a little bit of this stuff, they bus them up to places like Chicago. The reason this one article caught my attention was, the anticipation, the political intention, because they used it, liberals and progressives use this as a positive, that we're good people and we'll take care of people and we won't let anybody out on the streets, but a few will have to sleep in tents or something like that. So they do that, and then they come along and they say to them, what will happen is it becomes a political football. And it reminded me of 1968, because I remember the convention up there. But it was over a war issue. It was over Vietnam. And the people who were opposing war, they were radical progressives, but they were against the war.
Yeah.
And the Republicans and Nixon, they were all for the war, except in 1968, it turned around. The pro-war people were smart enough to realize that the Democrats had a lot to say. Johnson and the others, they had a lot to say why that war was going on. So they made a plan, and they had a list of all the far left progressive groups, and they invited them all, and they all went to Chicago. And boy, it was met with resistance. That was, and Nixon won that election overwhelmingly. But it was total chaos. So that is what I keep thinking, could that happen again? And I think the people in this country they're saying, well, we can take care of this, but we just want to make sure we have help. Here, Pritzker, the governor, everybody's involved, but they're getting a little bit nervous now with that. Said he is confident that local officials will be able to handle whatever spate of migrants arrive in lead up to the convention, as long as they get sufficient federal money. So all of a sudden, that's it. And it's Texans that caused all this problem. And they're trying to survive the border invasion. So that to me, is a rough situation, and I look at the borders as a it's a foreign policy position. Do you let people just come in or what? And I don't know of any decent American who would say we hate foreigners, we don't want foreigners or nothing. I don't think because I think people mostly listen to it and said, all of us, had some relative immigrate here, but it was usually under very different circumstances. So I think this is, something that is going to be interesting to watch, and it could backfire just as much as it did, on the Democrats in the 60s. They finally got tired of it. And I think the polling that you were talking to, it looks like back then it was the Democrats separating from their own Democrats. But this is, I think it's Republicans and Democrats. I think it's the people, sort of like nobody asked, when people started rebelling about the COVID, nobody asked if ever 200 or 300 parents going to some meeting and complaining. Nobody said, "Are you a Republican? Are you a Democrat?" They became united because they saw what the government was doing was harming their kids. And right now, people are starting to see all this spending and nonsense is, this idea of Biden saying, well, oh no, it was McConnell. Well, none of our people are dying. As if that should be a moral principle that would relieve you of all responsibility.
Cynicism. Well, I just want to go to that one clip, skip two and go to that one short one. Just punctuate what you're saying, Dr. Paul, and this is what Pritzker is irritated about. If we can, I know it's confusing, but skip two and go to that shortest one. There we go. Thank you. So Pritzker, he's the governor of Illinois, big guy, very wealthy. Pritzker recently told CBS Face the Nation that, quote, someone needs to work in Texas with these border politicians to have them stop sending people only to blue cities and blue states. And it is kind of funny because it's the blue states that say, oh, we need unlimited immigration. Come on in. But you got to live in Texas. You got to live somewhere else. So it is a little bit ironic and a little funny.
I want to go back to this whole thing about the war issue. What war are they opposed to? And of course, it's not Vietnam. People worry a little bit about Ukraine, but they are cynical enough to say, well, there's no bounty bags, Americans, so why the big deal? But there is a war going on, and the war isn't a neat little war that lasted a while, like the Korean War, a neat little war like, Vietnam, that was a horrible, horrible war. But I see that we've, especially in the 21st century, we've been in perpetual war against, ourselves. And everything we do is an attack on civil liberties and privacy of the American citizens. And there's a war against the justice in this country. People aren't confident. They take sides on which judges they like, but it's pure, really hate and working it out through the judicial system. And this to me, but just think of the other wars. I made a little list here. And the Middle East, how many wars since this century started? Middle East, Iraq, and all that. Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, Ukraine, the Palestinian War, and all this thing. I think no, you don't have to have something identical to Vietnam to rebel against it. So I think people see that. Yes, the one thing that I was halfway wondering about, and that was when does immigration become an invasion? And I was talking to libertarians, and they thought I was too weak on the immigration thing. Everybody should come, but if you're too weak, then that is bad. But when does an immigration become an invasion? And I don't know how you can do it, because they don't look at there is an invasion. And the way I look at this personally is, are they doing anything that we would not complain about if they were doing it to our house.
Yeah.
Our country is our house, and we have a system of laws and all that bring people together to live within bounds. And the smaller number of laws, the better, and we have a libertarian view there. But they don't seem to care too much about that. But I think it's the war issue. It's a war against liberty, and it's a war. There's a lot of hot wars here, and there's still, and sometimes people might even think if they're universal and they want immigrants to come in, what happens if it becomes universal humanitarian concern, and think about all the deaths that have occurred in this century because of our foreign policy.
Yeah.
Both sides.
Yeah.
You know.
Absolutely.
There's a lot.
There's a lot.
Time to end it.
Time to end it. Well, if we go to that last picture, this is a Monday. This is the last couple of weeks of our fall fundraiser. And as hopefully many of you know, Dr. Paul's brand new book, The Great Surreptitious Coup, Who Stole Western Civilization, is a gift that we will give to you. You cannot get it anywhere else. You cannot purchase it. It's our gift to you for supporting the Ron Paul Institute, the Ron Paul Liberty Report. Your support is tax deductible. We are a 501c3, so to the extent of the law, it is tax deductible. I will put a link in here for how you can get a copy, either a soft copy or a permanent, forever hard copy of Dr. Paul's terrific new book. Couple weeks left. I just opened the last box of books, of hardcover books, which are going like hotcakes. So help a great cause, help the cause of peace, and let us give you something as a thank you in return. Over to you, Dr. Paul.
Very good. You know, I talked a little bit about the convention coming up and tried to make the point that it could be a very exciting effort in Chicago again, where the 1968 convention was held, and it really was a sign and a symptom, and actually predicted the immediate election in 68 as well as in 72. In 1972, the war issue had gone to the point where there were, Nixon or McGovern only won one seat, one state. So that's pretty definitive of what happens when people get tired of it. But the tragedy there was Nixon had this mandate. He ran on stopping the Vietnam War, and it lingered for years on, and thousands of Americans continue to be killed. So too much talk and no action of people, it must be, they get awfully frustrated when they do finally stand up. But that boils down, I think, so often to the standing and the evident morality of the people at large about what kind of people how the people want to live. Do they want to live in a tyrannical state as long as they get bread and circuses? Or are they going to say, no, I want to be free and I want to live with all my own decisions as long as we obey the rule of no injury or violence toward anybody else? That is the way to preserve liberty. That is the way to promote peace and liberty. Thank you for tuning in today. Please return soon.